We have 11 storytellers on the roster tonight. And they each have 10 minutes to tell a true story based on the theme Busted. Reid Reimers is a Missoula native with a master's in theater from the University of Montana. In the last 10 years, he has been an expressive arts educator, working with thousands of kids across the country, and has acted in dozens of local productions. As self-proclaimed Montucky vagabond, Reid has traveled extensively overseas on small-budget independent trips, often finding adventure and insights in the most unlikely of places. Please welcome Reid Reimers.
Get this to big person height here. Okay. Hi folks, how you doing? I have traveled quite a bit, and one of my favorite things about traveling is getting to meet local folks, and also just the openness that so many people find. This openness of having a stranger either come into your home for a meal or maybe stay overnight, somebody you just don't know at all. So when we're back here in Missoula, this was quite a few years ago, we were big fans of the couch surfing website, where essentially you open up your home to people, they kind of have a profile, and you can see recommendations. And so we had dozens of people stay with us from all around the country, doing cross-country bike trips or road trips, or just coming to Missoula for a job interview, something like that. And it was always just a wonderful experience. I love showing people around Missoula and showing the places I'm from. And one time we had this couple come in. His name was Angus Jocko Ferguson. And he was this tall guy, really well-built, really pale, bright ginger beard, shaved head. And he was just this really neat guy. And they stayed with us for a few days, and they were planning on moving to Missoula. We happened to have a room open in our house, so we were like, let's do it. You guys want to move in? And he was perfect. He had been to Oxford. He studied Shakespeare at Oxford. He dove right into the Missoula theater community and emceed a couple cabarets right off the bat. It was just a perfect fit for our kind of kooky lifestyle in our house. He had a little girlfriend. He was 27, she was 19, which was a little odd, but she was just this daffy little gal, and we really appreciated having her around. Now, when he moved in, he did tell us very clearly that he was in the military and that he was working with a particular group that he couldn't really talk about what he did. Kind of had to keep things on the down low. Couldn't really talk about a lot of details. He was very protective of his mail coming in and of his computer and things. But he was just one of these guys that things just seemed to happen to. When he first moved in, he had this $100 gift card to Walmart and went down, and when he went to cash it, it ended up being like $1,000 through some like crazy thing. So he ended up getting all this crazy stuff. He would win raffles all the time for really expensive things like $1,000 computers and things. And he just was one of those people that things just seemed to just flow for really well. He would go off on military training, and he would come back with these big bags full of flak jackets and crazy like air testers and stuff. And he couldn't really talk about what he had been doing there, but he would say, oh, we were actually jumping out of planes. We were practicing to do that. Or we were practicing to disarm like dirty bombs and stuff. But that's about all the details he would ever give. Well, one time he was on one of these trips with his girlfriend, and they decided to stop in at Maelstrom in Great Falls. And they were just going to go to the commissary to get some cheap Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Apparently it's really cheap there. And we get this call at like 3 a.m. from the little girlfriend. And she's completely panicked. She has a phone card that's about to run out. And she's like, Angus got arrested. They just dumped me here without any money or anything at the Walmart in Great Falls at 3 a.m. And then the phone clicked out. So we were like, my roommate Amy and I jumped into action, and we jumped into our little friend's car, and we drove on a rescue mission to Great Falls. And we couldn't get any information about what was going on then, so we just brought her back. And over the next week, we found out that, first of all, that the car that they were rolling in had been reported as a stolen rental car, and they just bought it a few months ago, which is a pretty awkward situation for them. And also there was something odd. They couldn't find his like credentials. They couldn't confirm his credentials, which kind of made sense because he was in this kind of like private group. So over that week, we found out that he was under just $1,000 bail. So we were like, well, shoot, we'll drive together $1,000, go on a rescue mission to pick up Angus Jocko Ferguson in Great Falls. So we do another midnight run to Great Falls and go to get him, and we go in and pay the bail. And when he comes out, he's like dazed almost. And I was like, oh God, what did they do to you in there? He just had this really strange look on his face, and he wasn't talking at all. And we get in the car, and we're starting to drive back, and he's like, you guys, I have some stuff I need to tell you. And first of all, he says, I'm not 27, I'm 37. And secondly, he says, I am not in the military at all. And this stuff is going to come to light very quickly. And essentially, once we get back to Missoula, I'm going to have to flee, right? Like, flee the law, like, go on the lam. I was like, does this really happen to normal people? Like, is this like a normal thing and just end up going on the lam? So it was a really emotional thing. We felt really hurt that he'd lied to us. And his girlfriend, of course, was just a mess. And we get back to Missoula, and he loads up a few things and just kind of goes trotting down Higgins and disappears. Well, lo and behold, right then at about noon that day, the FBI shows up at the house. And they're asking the whereabouts of Angus Jocko Ferguson. And they asked to search the house, which of course we let them do. And they just said, if you have any information, please let us know. And we're like, we absolutely will, because we didn't know any of this stuff was going on. He fled. We don't know where he's going. He didn't tell us. And he has like $1,000 of our bail. When you're a poor, broke artist, that's a lot of money. Over the next probably 3 weeks, the FBI is constantly stopping by the house. They're constantly sitting out in a car outside of our place. I work at the Badlander, so I'd be riding my bike and I'd see them like following me at like 15 behind me, like real subtle, guys, real subtle. And it just started to get more and more, and they started to get more and more adamant and more like kind of attacking about, you must know where he is, blah, 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 blah. So at the time we were doing the Rocky Horror Show at the Wilma, we were getting ready for it. And I played Dr. Frankenfurter, which means I get to dance around in 7-inch platform heels. It's not exactly the easiest. And quick fun fact, we are doing it again at the Wilma this Halloween, so hope to see you guys down there. And so, yeah, nice, right? So I found the easiest way to get used to walking around these monstrosity hooker shoes is to actually hula hoop in them. So I made myself this huge, heavy hula hoop with like a pound of sand and a bunch of water in it. And I would just stand out on my lawn with my headphones in and just be hula hooping out in my heels, doing my thing. I'm sure a wonderful thing for people to see as they drive by. And so one night it was like a new moon, it was pitch black, and where our driveway was completely coated in kind of an archway of trees. So it's like pitch black in there. And I'm out there and I'd had like a bottle of wine after rehearsal, and I'm hula hooping in my big heels. And I look over and there's this shadow kind of moves back around the corner of the house. And it scared the bejesus out of me. And I was like, all right, get out here. And like, it started like shouting. It startled me so bad. And this little federal agent comes out, this adorable little scamp, kind of his tail between his legs. And I was like, all right, where's the rest of you? Because they usually were in 2 people. And he's like, Greg, you should probably come out here. And so he comes out as well, and again, it's just pitch black, and I'm sitting there, and I had a bottle of wine, and was just berating these guys about violating our rights and being on private property, and how dare you, and we told you so many times that we would tell you if anything happened, and blah, blah, blah. And usually they'd really stood up and been like, we have the right to do this, we have authority, blah, blah, blah. And this time they just kind of shirked off, and like, again, tail between their legs, like wandered away. I was like, that's kind of odd, and then I realized that they couldn't see my heels. So I'm a tall guy anyway, so I'm like, about 7'2" in these things, just berating these federal agents like children who are, barely came up to my nipple level, which was pretty hilarious. Ends up, we get one message from Angus through some throwaway cell phone apparently or something, just to let his girlfriend know that he was fine. We end up kind of sending her back home because, of course, she's a mess. I mean, that makes sense. But also over these weeks, we start getting more and more information from the feds, and cards and letters are being sent to the house for stuff. And it ends up like one of them we got had Angus Jocko Ferguson listed, and then had like Brian Clements Johnson listed. And the next one had like 3 names, and the next one had like 4 names. And it ends up that this guy had been just running around the country, like starting using fake names, getting out fake credit cards. All these wins he had were just like fake credit cards he's been using. And his real name was Jeremy Clark Erskine, of all things. So it was kind of a dash to my trust in people, I guess, in some ways, because I'm not a gullible person. I feel like I can pick up on subtle things pretty well. I usually deal with things pretty logically. And so to have somebody kind of pull one over on me was just kind of a hurt to the ego, if anything, but also kind of made me start to like listen to people. Ends up, of course, he'd never been to Oxford, right? was not in the military, wasn't any part of any of this kind of stuff. So it was definitely kind of a learning experience. They did eventually track him down. He's now in prison in California somewhere for impersonating an officer and all this scams and frauds and everything else. He did steal the car, all these things. But I guess it boiled down to me kind of having a choice, though, because all of a sudden somebody would be like, oh yeah, I got my master's in this, and I'd be like, really? Can I see your degree? I don't buy that for a second. During this time. But I essentially kind of came around the corner and just decided that I would rather live a trusting life and really open myself up still and really have faith that most people are good, stinking people and maybe be burned a little bit here and there on some BS than live this paranoid kind of mess. So I guess I would just say that, if you're ever in a situation like that, and if there's enough things that add up that are like, that's just crazy, I can't believe you won another computer, don't necessarily be paranoid, but at least be aware. Okay. Thank you very much.
Jennifer Edwards is an artist, handy woman, and wannabe farmer. Please welcome to the stage Jennifer Edwards.
All right, so this is my story. The day that I walked into the feed store to get some cat food, I didn't expect to break the law or become a criminal. I walked in the door and I heard this peep, 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 and I ended up standing in front of these two blue Polish chicks. They're chickens. And there were just two left in this run. And they're like regular chickens, but they've got like a little cotton top on top. And one of them looked kind of gimpy, but the other one that was peeping that brought me over there, was like, I stood there and I tried not to let that little peep get into my heart, but it did. And so I brought him home. I got a 2-for-1 deal because the one looked kind of gimpy. And it ended up dying overnight. But, and I don't know if any else are you or chicken owners, but you can't just have one chick. So I went back and I got 2 more chicks the next day and added them to my flock of, I had 3 other chicks. I had a couple of flyers that even though I had a really tall fence, I kept flying over. And then I had Penelope, who was 13 and a half, and Buffy, who was about 4. And then I had these 3 new chicks that I kept in my bathroom until it was warm enough for them to eventually stage outside. And so I had the blue Polish chick, I had a little golden one, and a Bardrock, which is black and white, and they were pretty sweet. They kind of stuck together. They were their own little chicken gang, and as they grew and developed, I started hearing funny noises, and eventually I became aware that one of them was a rooster. And, part of the problem here is that I'm a woman of a certain age and my emotions have become, I'm having a second adolescence emotionally. And I became very, very attached to this new brood of chickens. And, of course I've named them. And, started out, I was going to call him Blue, but I ended up calling the Bardrock Blue, and I ended up calling him Percival, but in public I called him Priscilla the Fierce. And tried to hide his sexual identity. And unfortunately, he really grew, and he was made to crow. I mean, his whole being, he's like, and he'd pump himself up and he just, he would crow to dogs, he would crow to people, I mean, everything. And and he was the best little gentleman too. Like, he'd find like the juiciest bug and he'd like, boop, 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 and he'd call the ladies over, like, come here, this is great. And if there was like a raccoon or something prowling the neighborhood, he would let me know, but he stayed pretty quiet. And and I was checking in with my neighbors at all points, saying, does my rooster, is he okay? Is he bugging you? And I would keep him in. I made sure that, I put them in every night, because I'm a responsible chicken owner. And I'd put them in every night, and at dark, and in the morning I had the timer on, but I wouldn't let them out till about 8 or 9 in the morning. And, because as soon as he was out, he was crowing. And I was really, I didn't know what to do. It's such a dilemma. So I was calling vets, asking them if they did various operations. Either this or this, something. Nobody does that. I thought about going rogue and keeping him in my attic. At one point, one of my neighbors came over and said, hey, animal control came over. Somebody called and they're looking for your rooster. And I was house sitting for a friend of mine that also happened to have chickens. And so I stuffed him into a bag. I drove him over there and brought him over for a nice conjugal visit. And, he made the hens happier. He did. I mean, their laying went up. They were, making happy noises. It was good. It was not a bad thing. And, kind of like, it's a life thing. I think it was important to everybody. So when animal control asked me, I said, no, there is no chicken here. Or there's no rooster here. I said, there's no rooster. No. And there wasn't at that moment. And so I brought him home. And it continued. He had his own little fan club. He was a little rock star. Like if Phyllis Diller and Tina Turner and Iggy Pop had all gotten together and had an orgy, he could have been their love child. He was blonde, and he would just, he was beautiful, like a beautiful critter. And and I didn't know what to do. I mean, my neighbors around me were all really good except for one neighbor who was kind of taking it upon himself to, be the neighborhood Nazi, or just like he's the guy that makes sure that nobody breaks the law. And he was the one guy too at the city council meetings when we were all speaking about wanting to have chickens in 2006, that he was the one guy that spoke against chickens, and for really weird reasons. So he had a thing. But he couldn't prove. I mean, it wasn't like he didn't know where it was coming from. I've got a fairly enclosed yard. I've got lots of shrubbery and trees and things. And the other, my neighbors, the other ones were all pretty good. And even the kids, when they came over for Halloween that year, they were like, oh, we love your rooster. We love your rooster. And, it was kind of nice. He had his own little fan club. And but one day it happened. It was, I'd had them for almost a year at this point, this spring. I was taking some stuff out to the dump, and between myself and my friend and we left the back gate open. And, and they're curious beasties. They're fragile and they're tasty, but they're curious. And they went wandering around the neighborhood, and, my neighbor was, the one guy, he was right there. It's like, oh, I see them. They're like, it's a herd of roosters out there. And he called animal control, and my other neighbors, they were like trying to herd them back into the yard in time, but I was caught. I was busted. I got the notice. They said, we know you have a rooster. And I had, till the end of April to find him a home. And that's one of the things, like the rooster crows, but the hen delivers the goods. It's hard to find homes for roosters. And a lot of farms, you have like one rooster and you have a flock of chickens. And so I tried. I was looking, I was asking, I was talking to friends and people that had farms, and it was down to April 30th, the last day. I had a pot of hot water on the stove. Whatever happened, a chicken was going to die that day. And because I had, out of the the chicks that I'd brought home, 2 were still alive, and out of the other chickens that I had, the 13-and-a-half-year-old had died. I had Buffy still, who was about 4-ish at that, 5-ish at that point. But it was the last day, and I decided I'd given myself till noon, even though I had till midnight. Because it's a process. It's a hard job, to kill a chicken or kill any beastie, I think, and I think that's kind of the way that it should be. I don't like the idea of commercial farms. I think that they're like, torture camps for animals, and I'm an omnivore. So, for me, I want my chickens, I want my beasties to have a good life before I eat them. And I think that that's true. I really believe that the kinder you are to them, the better they taste. But these guys, they're only a year old, so they hadn't had a full life yet. I mean, even the layer hens that you get later, they're all like 2.5 years old before they get killed. So, but there at 11:42, I get a call, and the Organics Farm in Gonzalas called and said, we heard about your plight. We'll take your rooster. And I threw in Goldie also because she was just in her laying prime, so that the two of them could go together. And Buffy, I killed and put her in a pot, and I ate her. But that day, Percival and Goldie went to a new home. It was a little slice of chicken heaven. They're still there, I believe, and they're having a good life. That's my story.
Steve Gonzalas is a third-generation plasterer, just a Dixie cup floating down the river of life, saw Jimi Hendrix in concert while on organic mescaline. Please welcome Steve Gonzalas.
Okay, so me and Danny Howard, we're heading for the Tijuana-San Ysidro border, and we need to find a place to pull over because he's driving my car, and I need to get in the trunk because I have to trunk it through the border. Back in 1969, they didn't let long hairs into Mexico. Back when I had hair, it was like Jerry Garcia, Charles Manson. Growing a beard, I needed to get in the trunk. So, anyway, I trunked it, a Mexican sneaking into Mexico. I mean, so anyway, we make it. Okay, we pull over, we're in Tijuana. I get out, boom, we hit the bars, party like it's 1969. So, kids from all over the place went to Tijuana because you only needed to be 18 to drink. So nobody went down there and nobody fought, nobody cared. We just had fun down there, and that's when I met Sandy Block at the Aloha Club. Okay, so anyway, we hook up. She went to Chula Vista High, I went to Sweetwater. We go back, we become an item. She lived with her aunt and uncle. Her mom and her younger sister lived nearby, Chula Vista, and her grandpa and grandma Blaine, they lived in Bonita. They were from Nebraska. They told me they were bohunks. I really didn't know what it meant, but they said, that's Bohemian. Okay. They're wholesome folk, did a lot of good cooking, a lot of desserts. I got a lot of recipes. So it was fun. Me and Sandy hung out for a while, but at that time, Sandy was a postal worker, mail carrier, whatever. But previously, she had hooked up with her high school boyfriend, Jim, who was a bad boy. And they had a rough relationship. And he was a junkie, and then, well, she tried to commit suicide 2 times. The first time, she jumped out of a moving car, and that didn't work because she tried it again. And this time she sliced her wrist. Okay, at that time, she was a nurse at a mental institution. And the patients felt that she was crazier than they were. So they let her go. And then she went to be a postal person. I mean, that just sounds funny to me. Okay, so in time, Sandy, real pretty, long blonde hair down her back, started to hook up with Jimbo again and started to become, well, she became a junkie, okay? She started missing work and she lost her job and her people were concerned. So they asked me, what's going on with Sandy? We miss her. We don't see her, and she moved out of her aunt and uncle's place. So I said, okay, I'll I'll take her over to Grandma and Grandpa Blaine's place and we'll have a visit. So I pick her up after work. We go over there and they're all happy. It's just all this love, and there's coffee going, and there's desserts going, and Grandma's giving us a tour of the house. Grandpa's rolling pipe tobacco, roll your owns, and Grandma takes us into the bathroom. Beautiful remodel, shower curtains, tile, knicky-knacks hanging on the wall, those doilies that are starch that go over the Kleenex thingy, fuzzy toilet tank lid, fuzzy toilet lid thingy, vinyl foam toilet seat, and white shag carpet rug. Damn. So, we're visiting in the kitchen. Good old time. But I need to use the restroom, so I excuse myself, I go in there. Lift up the fuzzy toilet lid, and I look down, and it's like, damn, Grandma. Because back then, it was this saying, like, brown, flush it down, yellow, it's mellow, whatever. I mean, you've been busy, Grandma. I mean, because the toilet was filled with toilet paper. I mean, she didn't flush all day. So I do my thing, and I'm going, damn, I'm washing my hands, and I'm going, oh, shit, I just flush it. So the old days, the tanks were like 5 gallons, and sometimes the water went up and or did a spin. So I'm washing, being really careful not to get anything anywhere. And it's rising. I'm going, oh shit. And it's rising more. I'm going, no, God damn it, shit. Oh no, God. Why me? Oh shit. Drop to my knees, throw my arm in there. It's like the organic plunger. And I'm trying to grab the toilet paper in the hole. I'm doing that, and I'm reaching for the turn-off valve. I'm on my knees, right? I had come from work, so our work attire was boots, Levi's, and long sleeve flannel shirts. So my arm's in there, right, doing that thing. Okay, so it went down, and I'm on my knees going, oh man, how do I tell him? So I stand up and I'm wringing out my sleeve, and it's filled with toilet paper, and I'm going, how, why, shit, whatever. I blanked out. That was traumatic. I blanked out. Okay, I don't know what happened. I don't even remember what happened. But what I do know is now, to this day, if I go into anybody's bathroom, I don't care if I'm going to use it or not, I'm looking for a plunger and where the turnoff valve is. Because I don't know. So, my thoughts are, I think I was busted. Damn it. Janet? Holy cow. I think I was busted for flushing it down.
Ingrid Biehl was born on a glorious August day and has not let the world forget it ever since. Her hobbies include playing ukulele like a hipster flower child, struggling with her luscious lion's mane of hair, and collecting the souls of those who have wronged her. Please welcome Ingrid Biehl.
Hi. I just got really nervous because I'm seeing a lot of faces that are kind of too familiar, and I was not expecting that. So I'm Ingrid, and I'm 16 years old, and I've never really done anything bust-worthy before. So it was really hard for me to come up with a topic for this. So I got out my little sheet of paper that said busted across the top, and the first thing that I wrote down was gay with a question mark. What am I? And so my story starts with a little 6-year-old Ingrid who was completely obsessed with marine biology. It was kind of a problem. And I can't remember if I just couldn't read or if I was still too lazy to actually be reading this book. But I remember sitting on my bed and I was flipping through this book and I was only looking at the pictures. And I got to page 16 and there's this picture of 4 kids. There was 1 boy, 1 girl, and then 2 boys. And they were feeding this orca whale in SeaWorld. And I had all these weird, like, kind of butterfly feelings about this, like, when I was looking at this girl. Kind of like when you look at someone and you're like, damn. But I wasn't feeling that about those boys. And I was like, this is so weird. This is so wrong. Like, girls like boys and boys like girls. Like, that's just the way it is. It's the way it is. It's the way it goes. You're wrong. Something's wrong with you. And so I kind of went through, like, the rest of my life thinking that way. I don't really have any recollection of, like, crushes or anything like that. I feel like I just shut that part of my brain off. And then I got to 8th grade, and my world was kind of rocked. One of my friends in 8th grade, so a little backstory about the school that I went to. My graduating 8th grade class was 9 people, including myself. There were 8 girls and 1 boy. And I had known all of them since preschool. It was like we were related. And so it was like really weird to be attracted to them. It was just like, it didn't happen. And one of my friends, like one of my really good friends in 8th grade came out as bisexual. And I was like, what? 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 It just boggled my mind. And so I went home and I did some research. And there's like this whole other world that I didn't even know about. There's like, so bisexual, where you're attracted to both men and women, and then there's like pansexual, where you have the potential to be attracted to anybody. And then there's demisexual, where you're attracted to someone like on a spiritual level before a physical level. This was something that my like little 14-year-old brain just like could not handle. So I graduated from 8th grade. I'm still kind of boggled. And then I got to high school. And there were 345 other people in my grade, pretty evenly split out between boys and girls. And things really started to hit me. I was like, oh, okay, so you kind of look like a dude, and I'm really attracted to you, and then you kind of look like a girl, and I'm really attracted to you too, and I don't really know what's going on. And so at that point, I kind of started identifying with myself as bisexual, but I hadn't really told anyone else about it. It was still really iffy up there. And then about like halfway through my freshman year of high school, I started getting these crazy like anxiety problems. I was super anxious, and I was having like regular panic attacks. I don't know if that's happened to anyone else, but my life was kind of like hell for 4 months. And so I started going to counseling or therapy, and once I was like more comfortable with my therapist, I kind of brought it up. And she's like, well, is this something that you've talked to your parents about? Because if it isn't, it might bring you like relief or peace. She's a very down-to-earth lady. And I was like, no, I've never, ever considered that, ever, no. But it was kind of brought to my attention that maybe that would be something discussion worthy. And so there was this one pretty chilly morning, and I got pulled out of my 3rd period English class. I was kind of grateful for that because we were reading a really boring book. But I was like freaking out. I was like, okay, someone's dead. Like the dog died. My mom got in a car accident. My aunt was re-diagnosed with cancer. Like all of these awful things were going through my head. And I got to the office where they told me to go, and my dad was standing there. He's like, we're gonna go take a walk, we're gonna have some coffee. And in my head I was like, I know you, you know me, we're not gonna talk. We're just gonna like awkwardly walk beside each other, get coffee, and awkwardly walk back. That's kind of what ended up happening until we got to Big Dipper. And then at Big Dipper, I drew the line. I was like, I can't, this is so awkward. And I just kind of like took a deep breath and I was like, all right, this is happening. This is really happening. And I looked at him and I was like, Dad, I think I'm gay. And there was this long pause. And I was like, oh shit. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. There's this long pause. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. I was like, oh. It was so nerve-wracking for some reason. Like I knew that he was gonna be okay with it, but there was this like little part in the back of my mind that was still like, yeah. And then it's kind of like getting into springish time. So you have like a timeline here. It's getting towards spring, and I like met this person. And I met this person who totally rocked my world. It was like nothing I had ever experienced before, because I kind of had like shut off that part of my brain for a little while and never really brought it back until now. And this person was born female, but they don't identify as female. They identify as gender neutral, which is another thing that was in this world that I had just then learned about. And I was like, there's more to this. What? So complicated. I met this person, and we had this amazing connection. It was a connection that I had never, ever thought could even be made with another human being. It was like something clicked, and it like really clicked. And before they were comfortable going on in the relationship that we had started, they were like, okay, you have to come out to your mom. Like, it's just a must. It was like, it almost felt like we were hiding it from my mom, because I was still really hesitant about it. And so that night I went home and I sat down at my kitchen table and I started writing this letter to my mom, because I just like, I can't talk, still to this day, I cannot talk to her about anything like this, and I don't know why. It really sucks. Like, that's a big part of what moms are for. They're for talking about boys or girls or your problems. And I just like, I can't do that. And so it was weird, and so I started writing this letter. And I get down like halfway through this letter, and it just like, it hit me, and it broke me. That people can't make the same connections that I made with this person because they're too scared. They're afraid that they're gonna lose people that are close to them. They're afraid that harm is gonna come to them. And there are people who can't make these connections because they don't thrive in an environment like I thrive in. I live in this wonderful place called Missoula, filled with these wonderful people, sometimes called Missoulians. Yes. And they're so accepting of like demisexual. They're okay with these kind of like weird little things that people, they feel that way, and they're open, they're open about that. And these crazy people, crazy in a good way people, called Missoulians, are like cool with it. They're like, dude, that's awesome. Tell me more about it. And so I live in this kind of environment where like that happens. But if I were to live in like some other place, I don't know where else, like a bigger city or a place where people are like this instead of like this, I would probably still be in that 4-month hell where I was having regular panic attacks. And so I guess the moral of this is that I'm so thankful for everyone that's in my life, that's been a part of my life so far, to give me the confidence to be okay with who I am, and to, I have this amazing support group, and they're the kind of people who are like, cool, tell me more about this, rather than the kind of people who are like, get away from me. And so I want to thank my friends and my family and the unexpected faces in this room that I wasn't expecting to see. And I want to thank Missoula for being so cool about this kind of stuff. Thank you.